Reform UK, they've held another press conference today. Of course, they've got their strategy of fighting crime. Today, the focus was on the safety of women and girls. Let's take a listen, shall we, to one of the Reform councillors, Lyndon Kemcaron. Let's take a listen.
There are two recent phenomena that have, without a doubt, caused women and girls to be less safe. The first, as Andrea just referenced, is the belief that's been actively and at times aggressively pushed on us by politicians, the media and our state institutions that biological men pretending to be women should be allowed into female-only single-sex spaces. The second is, of course, illegal migration. The invasion, and I use the word invasion because that is exactly what it is, of hundreds and thousands of undocumented men who've come from countries where violence is the norm and women are not even second-class citizens.
Well, Zia, this is your party. It was quite a lengthy press conference we heard from different members of Reform UK, all with that same message, though, that, you know what, situation when it comes to the safety of women and girls is now at a critical point. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, as you heard at the press conference, we live in a country now, sadly, the United Kingdom, where many women and girls don't feel safe walking home from school or walking home from the station in the evenings. And that is a travesty. And one of the reasons, not the only, but one of the key reasons is the mass importation of people into this country from countries where exactly as you heard there, violence, particularly against women, is much more preponderant than it is in the UK. And this is not some subjective aspersion that Reform is casting. It is borne out by official data. So, for example, when we talk about men from Afghanistan are 22 times more likely to be convicted of a sex offence than a native British person.
I've seen a lot of pushback to that stat.
A lot of people push back on it, but it's because it makes a lot of people feel uncomfortable. Nobody is satisfactorily. That is a statistically significant sample. So unless you're willing to unless you're able to falsify that data, and again, that is official data from the government, then I'm afraid there's no truck in those disputations. The reality is we have had, for now, probably a decade, we've had the importation, particularly coming by small boat, right, where the majority of the people coming across the channel illegally are men, north of 75–80% in any given year. Most of them are of military age, and the majority of those men, Michelle, come from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Iraq, Iran, countries which don't have a great track record in terms of their relationship with Britain, but also countries where, again, violence against women is sadly much, much more preponderant in those countries than they are here. And you can draw a straight line between that and the grooming gangs and the cover-up that happened around that. So I want to stress, again, Michelle, this is not casting aspersions subjectively. These assessments that we have made, and us calling this a national security emergency, and the brilliant women, by the way, I want to say, I think Reform now has the most formidable women in British politics. The reason we are making this point is because it is true, it is borne out by the data, and it's time somebody did something about this.
Barry Gardiner?
Look, I'll take Nigel Farage's position on violence on women and girls seriously when he and his MPs in Parliament no longer vote against legislation to tackle stalking, legislation to tackle harassment, legislation to tackle upskirting, legislation to tackle spiking of drinks, posting personal photos of women without their consent online, when he takes seriously the online safety of young people and votes to ensure that they cannot get material on suicide or self-harm or eating disorders or pornography. He has voted against all such legislation in Parliament. So the idea that he has a track record to be proud of in this, I think, is profoundly mistaken. And the same goes for every single Reform MP. They voted against that legislation.
Labour do this a lot. They point to Reform MPs voting against a bill that had something in there about what Barry just talked about, but it was bundled in, Barry. You couldn't select.
No, it wasn't. No, it was
bundled in.
That.
Well, let's take the Online Safety Act. You just talked about women's online safety. Online Safety Act which, as we speak, is censoring. Let's talk about protecting women from predators, for example.
Let's talk about
It is censoring on social media Katie Lamb's speech, where she went through the cover-up and excoriated those responsible in terms of the grooming gangs. Censored Elon Musk's retweet of an actual transcript from a court case with regards to the grooming gangs. Or, you know, I could go as far as to say, you know, forums on Reddit which are helping young people quit smoking, for example. These things are being censored. Footage of protests in Leeds outside a migrant hotel, those are being censored. So this notion, and so, yes, that's why reform is deadly against such bills. But the reality is, here's what matters, Barry. Under Keir Starmer, if you look at year to date, we're closing in on 30,000 illegal migrants crossing the channel this year to date. That isn't down. Well, you can laugh, Barry, but that is not down. It's not down a lot. It's up. It is at record numbers. It is at record numbers. We don't know anything about these people.
I don't laugh at that, Zia.
Well, you did just laugh. That's exactly what you did. You just laughed.
I laugh at the fact that you always change the subject back to the illegal migrants.
But we're talking. That's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about women's safety as a result of importing people from these countries.
And Nigel Farage's MPs voting against measures to stop stalking, harassment, upskirting, spiking of drinks, personal photographs being posted online. That's what they voted against, and you want to justify it.
So, Barry, let's do this.
Stop talking over each other, please.
Do you want to save a boatload of cash this summer, wherever you have a trip planned? The one thing you're going to need is access to the internet and on the go. And you can do that easily with Saily. Hit the link in the description to get 15% of your first eSIM plan ready for your trip so you can browse to your heart's content. Saily gets you a local SIM card you can use when traveling so you don't have to pay those crazy roaming fees just to send a message or check the latest news. Now, they've got plans in over 160 countries, 8 regions, so pretty much everywhere, wherever you're going, they'll be able to make sure you're connected. So how does it work? All you've got to do is this. Hit the link in the description to download the app. It will work on iOS or Android. Buy a plan. You can choose an amount of data and time frame that suits you best. And then just install the eSIM on your phone. When you land at your holiday destination, you can activate your plan instantly. And if that wasn't enough, Saily eSIMs only ever have to be installed once. So when you go on your next trip, you just buy a plan for a new country, turn that eSIM back on, and boom, you're back watching me on GB News. I'll be using a Saily SIM on my next holiday because it's actually faster than some of the hotel Wi-Fis. You can get unlimited data if you want, so you can scroll away to your heart's content. And when you leave the hotel, you don't have to do that annoying thing of Wi-Fi hopping because you've got constant connectivity wherever you go. And they've got 24/7 support as well and a full refund policy if your eSIM isn't compatible. So get sorted for your next trip. Download Saily using the link in the description below. And if you use the code NEWS at checkout, you'll get an exclusive 15% discount on us. So click the link, download Saily, and use the code NEWS at checkout.
So let's do this. Let's say you're right and that all of those bills that Reform MPs voted against were absolutely amazing and should have passed. We're talking about 5 MPs, we're talking about 4 MPs at any given point. So those bills were going to pass anyway. You have a walloping majority. So why is it then that women feel so unsafe? Why is it that small boat crossings from these countries we're talking about are at all-time highs?
Against them?
Well, precisely for the reason that you haven't solved anything. None of these bills that you're talking about that the Reform MPs voted against, despite them being so amazing, have achieved anything despite passing. Explain to me why, despite the fact those bills passed, small boat crossings are at all-time highs and people in this country feel so unsafe, particularly women. Please explain that to me.
Well, I can explain to you that actually the number of arrests and prosecutions for rape are going up, and that is as a result of what we're doing. The crimes...
what you're saying is rapes are going up.
No, we're saying the prosecutions for them are, because as you well know, prosecution under the Conservatives was 2% of all reported rapes. It's important that those people are prosecuted and put away in prison.
Agreed.
And that's what you lot have voted against.
Barry, then why is rape up year on year? Sexual assault is up year on year. Shoplifting is up year on year. All of these numbers are going up. despite the fact that this magical legislation that Reform MPs voted against.
You voted against the measures to make shoplifting a triable either-way offence, which meant that if somebody had shoplifted once,
and
it's a summary crime.
Did the legislation pass despite us voting against it?
If somebody commits 16 different elements of shoplifting in their crime
did the legislation
career,
pass?
We passed it,
right.
but
so
you
why is
didn't
shoplifting
support
up?
it.
Why is shoplifting still going up? Why? If you walk into so many stores, if you go into a pharmacy these days,
why did you vote against it?
They're locking up retailing. Well, Barry, you've still not answered.
What is it that you like about men being able to post photos of women naked in sexually compromising positions online? Your members of Parliament.
It takes a lot of gall. It takes a lot of gall as a Labour MP to sit here and claim that you are in favour of protecting women, when again you've left our borders undefended. Small boat crossings are up at all-time levels, and again, I want to repeat: rape is up, sexual assault is up. These things continue to go up. Women do not feel safe, which is why there's so much coverage around the press conference that we did today. And again, I want to go back to the point. It's not just you. It's sort of become this trope now that Labour MPs and cabinet ministers pull out and go, "Oh, Reform voted against this amazing legislation." Well, the legislation passed anyway, and the country's continuing to get worse at an accelerating pace, which would suggest us voting against those bills was probably a darn good thing, Barry.
I remember.
So you think it's a darn good thing that your members of Parliament voted against measures to stop stalking and harassment, upskirting and spiking of drinks.
Barry,
thanks very much.
Barry, we're living in a country. We're living in a country. We're living in a country where a foreign man,
the Doge leader of Reform,
where a foreign man, where a Reform,
excuse me. Stop talking over each other, because at home people will be turning down their hearing aids, won't you? You'll be turning your volume down, thinking this is something Matt, no one can hear anything when we're all talking over each other. I've got to tell you that I think this is a bit disingenuous. If someone votes against a bill as a collective, that doesn't mean to say that they support and condone the things that you suggest. So if someone votes against an entirety of a bill, that doesn't mean that they are pro-women getting spiked. It doesn't mean that they are pro-girls having their vaginas photographed up their skirts. And people do this all the time. They used to do it with Christopher Chirp. I always remember that. He voted against some upskirting stuff. So for years, well, for a long time, he was known as the guy that was pro-upskirting. It was absolute nonsense, because he used to sit there and say, I voted against it because we already have the laws in this country to prevent that. As a woman, I find it really disingenuous to suggest that certain MPs would like me to be sexually assaulted or spiked or something because they didn't support the entirety of a debate. I just think it's not great political.
You're absolutely right that the way Parliament works, bills contain a lot of other things as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes people will vote against them on that basis. But actually, GB News has in the past said, why was it that Labour MPs voted against the proposals that they put forward, which were about the grooming gangs, when actually even voting for them would not have even voting for that amendment would have done nothing. So two can play that game.
I know, but
I'm not playing that game. I'm referring specifically because in this instance, they could have put down an amendment which welcomed those elements of the bill but disagreed with certain other parts. They didn't.
Which, given we're a tiny fraction right now, because of the way the system works, of the MPs in Westminster, would have been a complete waste of time. But let's also be clear, as Michelle said, everything you just described is already illegal in this country. I just want to finish the point that you had a 13-year-old girl who was raped and the man was given a 7-year sentence and let out after 2.5 years. The problem is not the legislation, Barry. The problem is we need more prison places, we need a police force that arrests criminals, we need mandatory minimum sentences, and people need to serve the entirety of those sentences.
Who vote the way they tell the public they think.
Well,
yours didn't.
What do you think to all of this at home? Get in touch, join the conversation, all the usual ways. There's lots that we need to discuss.